So in this video, we're gonna break down the color grade of the Batman. Honestly, the jury is out. There's so many people from my circle that either love or hate this movie. Personally, I absolutely loved it. I thought that the whole Batman being vulnerable and not necessarily a playboy, but this awkward dude was really cool, and the way it was portrayed through cinematography and directing, top notch. Color, obviously, I feel like they made some bold choices. Whether you think about Zack Snyder's Batman or you think about Nolan's Batman, very different films. Okay, so we're gonna look at this. I'm going to compare and contrast. I'm also going to talk about the cinematography and certain directorial decisions that played into the actual grade and the final product that we see. Because I feel like no matter how hard I try to separate the two worlds, like just keep it post-production related and color grading, you cannot separate cinematography from grade, okay? Like they go hand in hand. And I also know that majority of the people that are watching stuff on my channel are modern day filmmakers. So you guys like to shoot, you guys are familiar with cinematography aspect of filmmaking. So I think it's a win-win. And personally, I went to school for cinematography, so it's really close to my heart and something that I'm passionate about and want to talk about. So blending the two worlds is just extremely exciting for me. So before we even jump in and go through the trailer and look at the scopes, I want to share this article from IndieWire, the cinematography behind the Batman. And I'm just going to pick out a few things and share with you. Okay, so first of all, let's start with why they went with the digital camera over film, because right here it says like they were in the discussions to shoot it on film, but then they decided to go with Alexa LF, and that's because Greg said, the cinematographer of the Batman, said that, you know, the large format, beautiful fall-offs, and shooting digitally meant that we could always see exactly what we were getting and fine-tune the lighting really carefully. So the director loved the idea of doing that on set, and so as the DP. So they went with Arri Alexa LF, but look at this, which is gonna blow your mind. They had Arri create custom designed alpha anamorphic lenses for them, for specifically for the Batman. So when you see a shot like this, and like look at the, I mean, what is this, right? Like you're looking like you're looking at a shot like this, and this anamorphic flares, and it's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's because it's unlike anything we've ever seen. They custom built the freaking lenses to create this unique look. And 90% of the time, guys, this is the jiggery pokery that's happening at that scale. Okay? When we're watching certain looks or the way they're shot, there's just so much happening on the back end that it is very exclusive. It's hard to get access to that. So this is not to kind of bring you down and kind of go, well, then I'll never be able to achieve this, but to let you know that that's just, you know, what's happening at that level. So if you try something and you get to a 85% of that look or that thing, you are better than most of the stuff that's out there. You're basically creating as good of a product as you can with the given budget, given resources. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say. So that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up. Now I want to talk about the terminology that Fraser used when it comes to color. So look at this. There is color, but it's not as saturated as most movies. And we can all relate to that, right? Like if I were to take you back here, and if we just kind of look at this color palette, it very much is very monochromatic. For the most part, forget about the party scenes, right? But even like them, if you try to compare that with like something from Joker, it's still not as saturated, right? But if you look at like these shots, like a lot of these, they're very monochromatic. It's like living in one quadrant, right? If we think about our vector scopes. So it is desaturated from that standpoint. And then look at this. He says, I wanted the colors to be dusty and a little dirty. And in my Facebook group, for my FCM members, I always talk about stuff like that. I'm like, clients will use funny terms, and you have to get used to picking up on that and just make sense of it, or start a dialogue. So what does that even mean? Like, I was even discussing that with my wife after I read this. I'm like, this is so, it's such a interesting choice of words, right? Like to describe, for the colors, I wanted dusty and little dirty. Like, little dirty is more like texture than color, don't you think? Like, it's more like grain and maybe a bit more to do with the contrast, right? Like, let it breathe, so the blacks are not pure blacks, and if they're not pure blacks, then it's sort of, in theory, kind of dirty, right? So those are the things that I'm connecting those dots. But now, if I'm talking to the director, if he or the DP, if he asked me for this look, then I'm gonna try to make sense of it and then kind of present that, and then see what he says. Like, maybe they'll come back around and be like, no, that's not what I mean. I meant X, Y, and Z. And then you go, oh, okay, gotcha. Like, that makes sense. So never be afraid to ask questions, but again, always expect like this sort of like funny terminology, because that's just what happens, right? And then he said, for the pivotal scene in the diner, he's saying like he literally offering to give them new fluorescent lights in exchange for their old fixture, which he would then integrate into the sets. So he used those old fixtures and then used it to create a little old and dingy look. So guys, I'm telling you, it's so weird, like when I work on projects and certain DPs are just asking for a rom-com look when the way they lit the set was like with this horror movie lighting. It's like the contrast ratio is like 12 to 1, 8 to 1, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, how am I supposed to turn this into a rom-com when it wasn't lit like that? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is like letting you know the kind of thought process and work that goes into it. And then I also want to share this with you, like where Fraser said that he absolutely hates unmotivated lighting, meaning like random light shafts, things like that. He's like, if the lighting doesn't make any sense, he's not gonna use it, okay? And then he works really closely with his production designer to create a set where everything is motivated. Okay, so even if we look at like killing them softly, like this still right here, you see the light in the background, right? So once they establish that there are street lights, then it's really easy for them to put a light right here and then hit them with this key light, and we buy it, right? Because we go, oh, there's street lights. But if that light wasn't there, then this light would have came out of nowhere. So what I'm saying, why is that important? That is important because sometimes I see colorists going in there and just start doing all sorts of stuff, like reshaping lights, like adding lights, like doing all kinds of stuff. And it's like, it is very important to the story. You have to get a sign off from your DP that, hey, is that okay if I go that far? If I push it that far, is it okay? If you're working on Alice in Wonderland, you can do anything. Like, you could just go crazy and it will be cool. But if you're working on something where the DP is like very specific to like these kind of things, then you can't just go out there, create light shafts, throw power windows on everything, and just go, this is what I'm going to do, and he's going to love it. He's going to hate it. So I'm bringing that up to your attention because that is like an ultimate beginner's mistake, that people just assume too much. It's a lot easier and saves you a lot of headaches to just like ask up front than like cooking up all that stuff in your head. So those were the things that I wanted to mention that were just like really interesting. And there's one more thing. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just fascinated by like when I was reading this article, I'm like, wow, like it just makes me want to go back and start filming again, like pick up a camera and do more than just a talking head, because it's just so exciting. Like he said, the car chase, they had everything hard mounted. So it wasn't on a gimbal. Gimbal will like, compensate for like all the bumps and all that stuff. He's like, no. He's like, I wanted for the audience to feel the raw power of that V8 that the Batman is driving. So he hard mounted cameras and let them rumble and vibrate. So I felt like that when I was watching the movie. Like, I'm like, dude, you got me. Like, this felt amazing. So again, that has nothing to do with color grading, but I just had to bring that up. Like, just a bonus little thing that I read here that it put a smile on my face. I'm like, that was so exciting. So now what we can do is we can jump in here. I'm going to play the trailer from the beginning and kind of pause and go and kind of talk through it and see what's really going on. So let's just go back in this mode. Let's pull up our scopes here. So we have a 4-up happening here. What I'm gonna do is right here, I should just put, or actually right here, I should put waveform. And that's my colorized waveform. And here's my parade. Here's my vector scope with the skin indicator. And keep an eye on this, because remember Fraser said that, you know, he wanted it not to be extremely saturated. All right. And if we go through, and you know what I'm talking about the dirty and dusty, like what he said, look at the contrast, what's happening here. And this to me gives me that like dusty or dirty feel compared to what? Compared to this. Like if we were to pull up some images from, let's just say, let's just pull up this image from The Dark Knight. Like, look at the contrast here. Now I go back to this, right? Look at the contrast here. Like how it's just, it's sort of like in the middle, it's like there's a lot of breathing room in there, right? And that's what's creating like that something is in the air, like particles in the air, you know, kind of thing. And then we go in, right? And still, like, look at the saturation. The saturation is not too crazy, right? Like if we go here, we see some meat, right? Like, I mean, this feels very much like we can think like this is what it looks like with our eyes, right? To me, it's a very natural looking grade. And that's the thing about Nolan, right? Like he does a lot of color timing, which is just basically printer lights, offsetting it a little bit here, a little bit there. And even when he creates looks, it's like through offsets. So like the skin tones will just go in whichever direction he wants to take the grade in. Whereas here, it does feel like there's more happening here, right? I mean, just like look at, like, so look at the anamorphic lens, right? Like, I mean, just look at that. It's so gorgeous. Like, once again, if we go back to that, I mean, this is just feels like this is shot on a Canon. I mean, obviously it's not, because this was shot on IMAX 70 millimeter. But what I'm saying is like this feels like it's shot on a regular lens, whereas you look at this and you're like, man, like what is that? It was custom built for this movie. I mean, so, you know, again, like I'm fascinated by it. So very cool. Clean, super clean grade here. Like the whites look so good, money, right? And we can even see it in the parade. Like look at the whites, right? Very close to being even. And that's what's giving it this. Like, I mean, it's a very crisp grade, right? Move forward. Again, that dust. Like, look at this, right? Isn't that dusty? Right? Like, this is just, to me, is dusty. Like, I'm looking at it. I'm like, damn. Like, look at this. Like, what? Right? And then, again, keep an eye right here. So, now I want to show you this frame, right? So, if we look at this frame, the knights in The Dark Knight look like this. The knights in the Batman look like that. And then if we put them next to each other, I mean, just look at the stark like difference. It is crazy to me, right? Like if I pull this down and show you this, like this is fascinating. That just by the grade, how much you can change. Like just the emotional response to like looking at these two. Like this is just so much more dramatic. It's just, it literally feels more action heavy and like all that just through color alone. Like you're just like, okay, I know what to expect. Something is gonna go down. Whereas here, it's kind of eerie. It's kind of dark. It's a thriller. Like it's a suspense. Like it's a detective flick. Like film noir. Like what is happening, right? Like there's just so many, unknowns there. And I feel that. I personally feel that. I mean, you can comment below and let me know what you thought when you saw the movie. But to me, that is just fascinating, right? Like same film done again, like differently with a different director, different like cinematographer, and all of a sudden you just get two completely different worlds. They're the same, but they're very different, right? And then keep moving forward. Like look at this once again. Like look at it, right? Like I mean, so in The Dark Knight, you guys will have to agree the blues are primary blues, like just hard, like solid blue that you will feel. I mean, look at that here, right? Like we got a complementary color scheme going on, a very healthy complementary color scheme going on. None of that over here. Look at the saturation. Look at the saturation here. Look at the saturation here. Okay? And then one more thing that I didn't even pick out that I should have mentioned. Again, I'm sorry, I keep going back to this. He's saying that this is a noir film and most of it is set at night. My concern was that it might be hard to see anything, so I scoured the internet for images that were dark but easy to see, and I collected them in a document format and for myself that I call dark but light. This is like so fascinating, and this is amazing because like look at this. Like let's go back to the light box view. That's exactly what's happening here. I mean, look at this shot right here. Like look at it. It's dark but light, right? Look at this. What is this? Dark but light. Like you just catch glimpse, right, of everything. Dark but light. Like it's genius, right? Same thing with this. Like this is dark but light, right? So dark but light. Dark but light. Right? Like so this to me is genuinely like so fascinating that you have a vision and then you make it a reality through lighting it, production design, color grading, and boom, it all comes together. So that was another thing that I just wanted to like really bring it up because when I read it, I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing because it's just so true. Like let's go back and look at it, right? So like we look at this, dark but light, and then look at that. Now I want to show you this. If I go back to the gallery and I pull up the Dark Knight Rises, and if we throw that up, look at this. I mean, this is the Dark Knight Rises. Look at the contrast, look at the colors. Like it's just, again, very much like what you would see with your eyes, but very clear, crystal clear, like 8K HDR, right? Like it's just so crisp. Whereas, what? Right? But it is dusty, right? It's a little dirty. It's that. Like they did it. Like it's just dingy and it's all those freaking things. Look at the colors, right? Between the two. And if I pull it up like that, like, wouldn't you go, one feels like log and the other one looks like Rec 709, you know, with like a grade on? And it's just, that's the direction. That's what they went with. So anytime online when people see a grade or whatever and they always go, oh, I would rather go with this or that, you know, that's not the point. Ultimately, it's always going to come down to like what is going to help the story and then which direction do we want to go in. And then the beauty of it is shot matching. You stick to a style and then you stick through it, right? For the entire piece, whether you're using 5 types of different cameras, 17 different locations, you just have to live in that world through and through. So that's what makes it really difficult. That's what makes color grading extremely hard, right? And I think that's why these breakdowns are amazing. Hopefully you guys get the same value that I do, because when I'm breaking them down, I'm looking at it and I'm going, what? Like, look at the scopes. I mean, come on. Look at the scopes. Like, what? Don't you think you will never do that? Like, don't you think that you'll just be like, no way. Like, the first thing that I want to do, I'm itching to just grab it from here and like raise it up. I'm itching to just grab it from here and go, something like this. Like, okay, now I can see something. Now I can breathe. Or even more than that, right? Like, I just want to go under my gain and I want to go, dude, come on, like, let's bring it up. Something, right? No. This is where it lives. Dark but light, right? Remember. So that's why these conversations are very important with your DP, with your director, and try to figure that out. And then own it. Own it. Live in that space, right? This is where they're living. Let's move on. So this is very interesting to me, right? So we got our train scene, and this is what it looks like. And it's very much sort of neutral, a little bit of color, a little bit of cyan, right? Like you can see it here, a little bit of cyan. Like, so it's not 100% neutral. 100% neutral would be if I subtract that cyan a couple of times and I put it right in the middle. And then that would be more like neutral. So obviously they're not doing that. They are like letting a little bit of cyan come through, and we can see it here. We can see it here. Majority of the image is made of that. But what happens if I now go to Joker and look at the train scene? Boom. Look at that. Look at the difference. Look at the colors. Look at the scopes, right? Boom. This is the Batman. This is Joker. Like, look at the two. Couldn't be more different. Interior, right? And again, like, I mean, I'm smiling because it's just so much fun for me to like look at these, study that, and then, you know, draw that conclusion that, man, there is no right or wrong. There will never be right or wrong answers when it comes to color grading. It's all going to come down to What are we creating? And that's why it never gets old for me. I am obsessed with color grading, and that's because of this reason. You can take the same movie and give it 100 different looks, and they will all be equally good, right? So that was just like really fascinating to me. Look at the saturation here. Look at the saturation right here. Non-existent, right? Dark but light, dark but light, right? And then the motivational lighting, right? It's just coming from, where is it coming from? All right, let's find out. It's coming from there. Like the light is coming from there. So that is that production design, right? Like let's incorporate lights in a way that nothing is coming out of nowhere. Like it has to make sense. Keep going. So even something like this, right? Like you kind of feel like there's a lot of color here. You kind of feel like, oh man, this has a lot of color, but it doesn't, right? Like look at this. Once again, if we just go back to Joker and look at something like this, I mean, now that's a color separation right there. Look at that. Now that's a color separation compared to this. Even the contrast here, right? Like with Jill, she's super unapologetic. Like she will like just push her blacks. Like she'll go for it. She'll own it. And I love that. But completely different styles. Look at that. So this was like really cool to me that in the Batman, the blacks are just desaturated. The blacks don't really have their own thing. Like look at it, right? And I'm not making this up. Like look at the blacks. Like the shadows are just pure white, meaning they're just neutral. So the anchors on the bottom are super clean. It's the top that they play with, and that's where they create the look. So like you're looking at the top, it's like this warmth that we're seeing in the back, and then made the bottom just boom, even it out. Whereas here, no. Like even if you look at the bottom, we got tons of color going on, right? So we got tons of teal at the bottom end, and then we got warmth up top. That's creating that complementary color right here. Not saturated like anything else. He means it, like literally. Like even something like this is not as crazy as, let's try to find something from The Dark Knight. If we have a scene like that, let me go back. Let me go to this scene, right, and then pull up this one next to it. And if we pull it up, I mean, come on, right? Like look at our blacks. So I'm not saying anything wrong about it. I mean, I'll throw on The Dark Knight here right now and I'll go, this is the best thing I've ever seen. It's crisp. It just, everything pops out. It's like 4D, right? Like I'm interacting with all the characters. It's amazing. But what I'm saying is there's something magical about this. I mean, let's not forget that this is the DP who shot Dune. It is one of the most beautiful looking things I've ever seen, right? So, I mean, the guy has the juice. The guy has the sauce. Like, he has the eye to just let it breathe. He has the confidence to be like, keep it here. It's going to look great. Trust me. Trust the process. Go. And it does. It looks great. I feel like it checks all the boxes and everything that they're trying to accomplish. So, it gets very interesting and beautiful, absolutely gorgeous for those scenes, like these specific scenes. And it was such a treat watching this film because I feel like this was the only moment, and I think they're trying to tell us something. Like this is where Batman sort of just feels like in control. He is, looking at the city from a bird's eye view. So he's in charge. He's in control, and that's where the color comes back, right? In his life, because ultimately that's one of the other things from the article, like where Greg says that we created the entire world, at least through cinematography, from the Batman's perspective. So if he's down, everything is desaturated, everything is chaotic. When he's up, like, when he's, in high spirits, something like this happens. Like where we get to see some color, we get to see this beautiful world, right? The endless possibilities. So we get to see that here. And then once again, them using their anamorphic lenses. I mean, what is that? Like, look at this magic that's happening on the edges. Like, it's just, it's like a painting, right? So personally, I think a lot of it is being created in camera. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some effects thrown on there to like accentuate that. Like, of course, they're probably doing something there, but I mean, I'm so jealous of like their custom, lenses to like get something like that. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and this is where we get to see some color. But once again, don't forget, living in the same quadrant, monochromatic, still very monotone, right? Like, let's just push all this warmth, and then we're gonna keep our blacks clean. Look at the blacks. So this is very interesting. If you want to give that a try, just keep in mind, create a look, whatever look you want, cyan, like cold look or warm look, and then keep your blacks proper, and you're gonna end up with like the Batman juice. It's really cool. And then we see, this is one of my favorite shots. Like, I think this is like such a gorgeous shot. There's like the what's happening in the background, and like look at her skin. Just like look at her skin, right? Like, so if we hover over, where's her skin sitting? So it's a little bit on the warm side, but again, motivated by the lighting. So if the lighting, because she's in the club, if the lighting is yellow, then the skin should not be perfect, right? So I love that, right? Like, let it happen. Let it go a little bit yellow, because the lighting in the room, I mean, it's a club. Yellow lighting, that's what's going to happen. And they're letting it happen. But the contrast on her is just to die for, right? I mean, just look at how gorgeous she looks, like how perfect her skin looks. And it's like a lot of it, like, the contrast has a lot to do with it. Like, where you don't push it enough where she starts to get ugly circles under her eyes and all that stuff. Like, of course, makeup and all that, but with contrast, you can do a lot to like soften out like bunch of these things, right? And still keep the density, the color density there, right? Like, every color belongs, and that's what's happening here. Dark but light, right? I mean, gorgeous. Again, the lenses are coming in hot, the anamorphic lenses here, and living in the same quadrant, blacks are proper, all that, right? All that jazz is happening here. Again, one of my favorite shots. It's like the warmth is just like so tastefully done. Like, when the color comes in, when they just like kind of sprinkle, like leak some of the color in, it's just like, I mean, it's gorgeous. Like, it's amazing. I love like how it just comes in and just kind of just sits into its slot. It's almost like each color has its own slot, and it just like hydraulics. Like, it just closes in, like it just goes in and fits in there. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I feel like they just killed it with that. Whether and it's a blend of like lighting and color grading, obviously. Love the whole, dark but light, and let's even keep him dark, right? Like, let's put the light somewhere else, and it's like, because that's the environment he's in. So same thing, going back to the whole motivation thing. So when you're grading this, and when you have that brief for the DP, then you don't overdo it. You don't throw windows on him and pull him out and do all that kind of stuff, right? Like, I mean, the DP is not gonna like if I go like this, and if I just let's do it, right? So like, I mean, if I'm kind of doing one of these numbers, right, and I'm rotating this, and then I'm going like, maybe I'll bring it up a little bit, right? Like, I'll bring my dude up, and then I'm gonna go back in the window, and I'm gonna soften it, I'm gonna track it, and the DP is gonna love me for it. He's not looking for that, right? I mean, he clearly said, like, I mean, it's just like when you heard the brief, like, where it's just like light, dark but light, right? Like, just keep it, let it live, let it be dark, and then we get glimpse, like, of like whatever is important, and we kind of search for it in the frame. So let it be that. I love it. I mean, this is a day shot. This is a shot during the day. What the hell is this exposure? What is going on, right? Like, aren't you itching to just go like this, and then grab your gamma and kind of go like this, and I don't know, like, I mean, aren't you itching to just pull it up a little bit, like do something? But why, right? Because the direction is already set. Like, that's what they're going for. So as a colorist, you have to realign, like, what is kosher, what your scopes are telling you to do, and then what needs to be done. That's why it's so much fun to work on music videos and narrative, like short films or features, because this is where you get to become a tastemaker and really go deep and create a look. If you're working on a commercial, I promise you 1,000,000%, this is gonna be, this just, it's not gonna happen, right? So if we pull up some of the best commercials from Company 3 and we look at them, look at this. Like, they'll always max out, right? They're not all from Company 3, but you get the idea. They're gonna max out, right? Why? Because what you're competing against. Like, these commercials are being placed or played during sports games, right? Sporting events, and all the sports events are in Rec 709, clipping top and bottom, right? Maxed out. So then you're not gonna throw something like this in there because people are not gonna be able to see what the hell is going on, right? Like, it will make absolutely zero sense. So commercials, for that reason, need to live in this world. Like, this is, by the way, is graded by my dude, Matt Osborne, senior colorist at Company 3, literally one of my favorite colorists. Like, you should check out his Instagram. The dude is like an absolute legend, like the kind of stuff that he creates. But going back to like what we're talking about here, right? Like, look at the contrast. Boom, this to this. And because that's what they set on, like, you know, that's what they wanted to do, and they're running with it. So it's really exciting. Like, if you ever get a chance to work on a music video, even if it's for free or a short film or something like that, please do it, because you're gonna come out of that shell. You're gonna start thinking outside the box, and then some of those traits you're gonna bring into working on a commercial and still create a really cool look, because you can't tell me that this is not gorgeous. This is still a really beautiful look, but in the confines of like what needs to be done, especially if you're working in the advertising commercial world. All right. This is also one of my favorite shots. And just to ruin the surprise, the part 2 video that I'm going to do on the Batman look, it's going to be on this shot. So this is the shot that I'm going to be basically recreating. And I just feel like there's a lot happening here. There's a lot to unpack. And it's just very cool to like create something like that. And especially how I created the first one, which was done simply using the tools that are available in Resolve. And once again, just look at this, right? Barely any saturation. Blacks are clean. White's got a little jiggery pokery to create a little bit of like a mood. But I like it. I'm really liking the contrast on this movie. I just feel like, again, it's just, it is so different between, you know, like, compared to both of these, right? Like, I mean, which I absolutely love. And then I feel like The Dark Knight, on the other hand, is just looking a bit dated, right? No disrespect, but looking just a bit dated compared to like this, which is just a new thing. Like, you just let your images breathe, like Dune or Blade Runner and Queen's Gambit. And it's like, this is the world that we're living in. The show Dark, right? Like, just let your images breathe. And it's just kind of cool. Like, I mean, sort of like a semi-log Rec 709, right? Like something in between. That's kind of cool. So this is like that dusty, dirty thing that Greg was talking about, right? And we see it here. We feel it. Dingy, right? Dirty, like these colors. Totally. Because it's like the mood completely changes if I go here and I just start pulling yellow out of it, right? So like if I pull yellow out of it, I pull some cyan out of it. Like if I just make it something like this and I do before and after, it's not dirty anymore. Now we're getting a little bit more into the Dark Knight category, right? Minus like all the other colors, because we're still very like staying clean on our shadows and then having tons of warmth on the top end. But this is just to kind of give you an example. Like if we clean it up, it would be like that. But this is dusty, dirty, right? So as a colorist, you have to interpret what that means. And then you have to create it by using your custom curves, your saturation levels, your anchors on the top and the bottom end, like which needs adjusting, when you're gonna show night, like what they're doing right now, how much blue are you gonna pump in, right? Are you gonna go this far, right? Or are you gonna go in this world, which is a little bit more. This to me is a bit more on the night scenes from Mad Max, right? So we have more cyan, whereas this is just flat out like way more blue. So here, if we go under our temp and tint, and if I take my tint and start adding magenta to it, I start to get like this, right? So like if I add more magenta, all of a sudden I got this kind of thing going on. So this is before, this is after, right? And then if I take my temperature, color temp, and if I cool it off, now I'm getting really close. I add more magenta, and now if I look at it, right, like even in the scopes. So this is before, this is after, right? So we can get there easily. And the reason why I used my temp and tint than any other controls is because I don't want to mess with my black points. And with temp and tint, it leaves your black points intact and it just moves everything in the middle, right? So we were able to create that. Now, let's keep going. It's just so gorgeous. Guys, before we keep going, I do want to take 1 second and mention this, okay? So I'm doing a live event on Saturday in less than 2 days, okay? So the live event is happening online. It's a live webinar. It's called The Art of the Colorist. And the topics I'm going to be covering are what does a colorist do, how to become a tastemaker, how to start color grading as a beginner. This is not going to be just theory-based or technical. We're also going to open up Resolve and create really fun looks. Really, really fun looks. And you guys are going to walk away with a lot. Not to mention, look at how many people have already registered. So we have over 2,600 people signed up. Actually, 44 are live right now. We have tons of questions in here. So I'm going to answer all these questions, but then when we're live after the presentation, there's going to be a huge long window where you guys can ask your specific questions and get tailor-made answers. So this event is going to be literally unreal. It's going to be amazing. And it's just a good time to hang out. So don't miss out on that opportunity. Link is going to be in the description of this video. So click on it, sign up. I would love to see you there. Say hi. This community is like so strong. Everybody is extremely friendly, and people help each other build network, opportunities within this platform. So get to know each other, hang out. It's a lot of fun. Let's get back to the video. So this is one of the shots that I felt like where they did have fun. They did have some color, right? But even when you look at the color here, and this is like party happening. I mean, we're in the club. I mean, it should be a lot more extreme than what it is, if you really think about it. Let's try to find something in Joker like that. I can't even. So even if we pull up this, right, which would be the closest to the colors, right? Kind of like you can even see it. So this is supposed to be like stupid house lights to a sodium vapor, street light, but still it has more saturation than this party scene here. So this gets to tell you how stingy they were with saturation and how much they wanted to hold off on it, right? But then it kind of made sense here, so they just let it happen a little bit because that was more realistic. And it's gorgeous. Like, these are some of my favorite frames from the film. Like, look at this. It's so gorgeous. It's amazing. Hands down, one of my favorite shots. Like, unreal. The kind of magic that happens when you try to keep your blacks clean and then do a lot of dance over here. And we can see it in our scopes, right? Look at the reds, look at the greens, look at the blues all the way down here. This frame will not be the same if you just start injecting tons of blue. If I pull up the blue, right? And it's not the same. Even if I just go under my log wheels and then I take my blue and I pull it down like such, and if I do before and after, it's not the same. I mean, look at the sky, right? Like, we took that warmth out by quote unquote like trying to level it, balance it a little bit. That's not the point. You know, this is like so much better. And again, those anamorphic lenses coming in hot. There's obviously a vignette, right? Oval vignette right here, feathered out, and like, and then there's a pull down pretty hard. And you can see, anytime you see this sort of action happening, this is what gives away the vignette. Like right there, right here. When you see that slope, that dip, that's when the vignette happens. Okay. Same thing here. There's a little vignette happening here, right, on that side, and we can feel it, right? Like it just like kind of goes to black, right? Like it goes to black, and then all the focus goes here. I mean, look at how gorgeous this shot is. I mean, Jesus, it like, it kind of just like, the framing and everything, it just kind of shook me up, just like looking at it from this perspective. Jesus. Again, right? Like, I mean, the colors are there living in the same quadrant though, because we're keeping the blacks clean. It might sound repetitive what I'm saying, some of the stuff that I'm saying here, but I think I have to do it to kind of help you get inside the mind of like the colorist that's working on, you know, a project like this. And then hopefully that will help you start thinking like that, and then try to implement those things onto your own work and start getting similar results. That's the ultimate goal. I mean, that's the ultimate goal that I have for you from this channel. I want to help people become tastemakers, because the technical stuff is just out there. You can get a book and learn as much as you want, but I feel like these are the things that are just like very exciting, very interesting to me. Love it. Dark but light. Vengeance. Great line. And then once again, this is that dusty, dirty, dingy, all of those, right? Like this shot, like I said, just blows my mind. I mean, you look at this and you look at this and it's like, what? On scope, sometimes it's hard to kind of tell, like, whoa, I mean, they kind of look similar. So what's really going on? I mean, obviously there's a lot more breathing room right here in this area, whereas here it's just flatlined, right? So we don't have that. So, okay, I want to show you this. Look at this scene, or this grade right here, and then look at this one right here. So, I mean, come on, right? Obviously, this is not a party. This is a party, but look at everything, though. Like, not just the colors. Look at, like, the contrast. And how, like, David Fincher-esque, like, the movie, not even Seven, like, almost like, what's his latest one? Curious Case of Benjamin Button, but the one after that, with Ben Affleck. I can't think of the name, but like if you think of that movie, it's very close to like that kind of look, right? Or even if you think of The Social Network minus all the yellow, like the way his contrast sits, it's very similar to that. I mean, think of the show, the Netflix series Mindhunter. It's sort of like that. Like Mindhunter, this gives me Mindhunter vibes, which is why I absolutely love the Batman, because anything crime related is my genre. Like Mindhunter is one of my favorite shows. First season of True Detective was one of my favorite shows. It's like, you give me any of that, I'm gonna eat it up. I'm gonna gobble it up. Like I'm gonna go nuts. I'm gonna swim in that Kool-Aid. So I feel like this gives me that. Whereas personally, I mean, this doesn't really do much for me, but it's done right on every level. Like, I mean, it's like so much saturation in the skin. It looks amazing. The whites are clean white, like, right? The blacks are perfectly black. I mean, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with it. But then, you know, when you read the context to what, you know, Greg and Matt wanted to create and what they ended up with is amazing. Like, I love it. Like, it's not easy, okay? Like, when you image barely has any saturation or even like strong contrast, yet it still looks very refined. It doesn't look like log, okay? There's a lot of stuff happening for it to look like that. Look at how gorgeous this is, because there's so much room. Like, the contrast is so gentle on the low end, but then on the high end, I mean, look at it, it's almost peaking, right? But then the rest of it is like just breathing. This is like one of my favorite shots, like, because this is like the epitome of like dark but light. Love that. It's those anamorphic lenses, man. So this is the only time, literally, this is the only time when I saw them break the keeping the blacks clean. Like that's the only time, because even with this shot, the blacks are pretty much clean, right? So like yes, the blues are down here and the green and reds are up, but here it becomes very obvious. Like it's like, you know, you got to go under your log wheels and you got to pull down your reds, you got to pull down your greens, right? And then I got to, what do I got to do? I got to pull up my blue just a little bit, not too much, but like something like that. And now if I do before and after, like this, if I do this, now I'm getting like the usual blacks that we have been accustomed to in this movie. But this is the only shot where they just kind of let it live in its world. And again, I like the dirty aspect of it, right? And it's like, what a shot. I mean, what the hell? Like, this is like such an amazing, one of my favorite shots of all time. I mean, wow, just look at it. Like, all of it. It's just so epic. So there you have it, guys. Like, I mean, this was a pretty long video. It didn't have any fancy talking head that I usually do. Just a different format, but, you know, obviously I usually don't have a little box and like little, you know, webcam situation happening here either. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you want to see more color grading breakdowns, and, you know, I want to keep them more like a conversation piece, like what just happened here. I think there's people that are not going to watch a longer form video. They're not going to watch it regardless. But people that want to deep dive and really get inside and understand what is really happening, what makes something what it is, I think they will find this video and this format very interesting, because we're covering much more than just like one aspect of filmmaking, right? Like, I mean, we're going beyond just post-production or color grading. I think having the cinematography aspect in there is extremely important, because as a colorist, that's all you're doing. You're working with the cinematographer. You are basically a cinematographer in post. That's what's really happening. Like, you're taking your cinematographer's vision, bringing it to life in post, and then, you know, adding a little spice on top of it. So you really are, I mean, I think of it as like, if a cinematographer is the Batman, then you are Batman's Robin, right? Or Catwoman, whatever you want to go with. But like, you're that, right? That's your role. Sometimes it could be more. Sometimes, like, you know, they'll just come to you and they'll be like, well, you're the hot shit. Like, do whatever the hell you want to do and just make it pop, make it look great. And then you do your thing. But in a case like this, where you're working with, like, at that caliber, you know, like Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser, like, they know exactly what they want. So when they're coming to you, then you are that Robin to that Batman, where you're just going to take it to the next level. And I think they did that here. So for me, in looks, I mean, it's up there. And even storytelling, the length, all of it, I ate it up. Like, I love that movie. So let me know your thoughts about the film as well. And then what movie or show you want me to cover next. Drop it down below. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget the training, guys. I'm doing this. It's going to be a live event on Saturday, March 26th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Would love to see you guys there. I will see you next time. Peace.